gonna, very tangible example, my 5-year-old son, we were driving and he wanted to know the answer to something, and I said, well, how can we figure that out? And he was in the back seat, and I adjusted my rear view mirror to kind of see him because he got really quiet back there, and sitting there kind of looking out the window and saying, well, Dad, I think we should ask Google. Right? That's the time we now live in. No longer is it a space where you try to find out your answers through the dictionary, or my grandparents just said, look in the encyclopedia, right? It's now ask Google. So when we think about where we are and what is happening nationally, what we need to do and who we're now educating, we need to look in the mirror. It's our chance to look in the mirror. So that we no longer have to look at this. There's a day when I do not want to have to show this as our slide. And if I do show this slide, it says something a lot different. But for the sake of our conversation, I want us to understand that when we think about achievement, it's very important that we think about what our achievement is actually telling. That is really the litmus test to tell us how our kids are performing on what the state deems is important. Granted, we may have differing opinions on whether state assessments or otherwise are the best way to do so. However, this is the game we have to play. Fair? So when we look in the mirror, we realize a few things. We realize at the end of the day that our kids have to meet a certain mark achievement-wise throughout the school year, every year, and those scores land in our kids' portfolio, whether they're advanced or otherwise. They eventually get to a point where they are about to leave high school, and they have to get a score, an ACT remediation-free score. It's hard to see up here. I apologize for the eye chart that I created for you all. But you can see up here there's an ACT score, a non-remediation or remediation-free score of 18 on English, 22 on reading, and 22 on math. But here's the challenge. That's just to get in. That's the minimum. Our kids have big dreams. Happened to walk into a kindergartner's classroom, and I said, you know what is it that you want to do? You know what? I want to go to Stanford University. Stanford's not a school. You can't get in there with a 22. If you look up here, Stanford's probably one of these 10 up here, and actually it's number 1. You need a 31 on the ACT. So when I see kids like this one, this is one of our scholars who graduated last year, and I actually pulled all of our grades. I had someone from our team pull all of our grades of all of our kids who graduated in 2017 and 2018, and I wanted to see all the grades. I then sifted for every child that received an A or higher. I found kids that had straight A's through all their grades, and this happens to be a young person that had straight A's. Straight A's throughout high school. They then go on to realize at the end of this, they want to go to college. I have straight A's, I'm ready to go. They face the reality that they have to get a remediation-free score, or there's other ways to get to college, don't get me wrong, but a remediation-free score would get them to maybe some of those schools on that list, right? This young person worked hard all the way through our system, K through 12, believes she's getting an excellent education, and gets these results. So for her English score, she got 17. She got a 17. For her reading score, that is the one where she wasn't remediation free. She was a 24. Bothers me because this kid had dreams. This kid has dreams. Believes they're doing the right thing all the way through to get to this moment and told they're not good enough. Fired up or upset or something, I don't know what would. So I asked, What do we do about this? So this young person happens to be one of our kids, and I apologize, these slides, I don't know if lighting would help, but these slides indicate just even more data around these kids who are deemed not ready for college. At the top, you'll see all of our Lorain high school grads who had left us over the past 5 years and have decided to enroll in LCC. And after LCC, they had to take a remedial math or a remedial English because they didn't have the scores necessary to be successful in high school. And at the top, you will see that those numbers are middle of the road, and 60 to 70% of our kids have to take a remedial course after they leave us. Early college, thank goodness, does a tremendous job of getting our kids prepared, and those numbers are significantly lower. So if we take out the early college numbers and just focus on the grads who did not have early college or dual enrollment, in 2018, 93% of our kids that left Lorain High and went on to LCCC needed a remedial math or a remedial reading. 93%. So when we think about the gravity of the work that we do, what we're setting our kids up for is the reality of, there's costs that go with those remedial courses. And so every time you take a remedial course, that goes into our kids' pockets at that point. And if you add up the numbers and start to see, we could be costing our collective graduating classes almost $100,000 in personal debt for our reluctance to change. So this mirror is our mirror. And this is going to be our conversation. Talk about what we need and want to do about this. Because this statement could go one of two ways. I ask us to do this. Take a minute, at your tables, think about the things that resonated with you about what you just saw. Talk at your tables. questions, but I want to make sure we're prepared to feed off the conversation you just had into some really fruitful conversation. Because here's what's going to happen. Tables should have or should be getting a large sheet of post-it paper to start to jot down some of the challenges, solutions, and ultimately some potential opportunities we have so that our team can collect your thoughts and add it to what we need to do to prioritize for next year, which we'll talk about on February 21st. So with that said, at your table, if you haven't received it already, you should receive a packet, or you might have a purple folder that has some data similar to the data that I presented a little bit earlier. The top sheet are the district's ACT scores over the past 5 years. Behind that, you'll see by school our state report card grade. Behind that, you'll see what we call our big board. So for folks that are not familiar with this, this was a big move for us to increase the level of transparency around how we're performing and what we're doing. Because that was a big question that was brought to us, that we're just not being transparent enough. And so we went to a space where we wanted to be overly transparent around what things we're actually seeing. So in this big board, you'll see 3 areas that we focus on: academics, effort, and behavior. And then you'll see how schools kind of score out against those metrics. All right? So at your table, you'll have a chance to open it up and look at that more deeply. And the goal is this, folks. Back to this window to think about how we're performing. We want to get to the space of looking at our blind spot. Here's our chance to look at, you know what, we need to hold this mirror and look at the things we may not completely know and figure out what we want to do about it. Okay? There may not be enough copies, so if we need more, we can get more, just raise your hand, we'll bring them to you. But through these conversations, I hope we unearth some really important information. So, those things should be at your desk. I'll be right there. I'll be right there. The next 3 slides will be a question. There will be some time to respond to each question. I'll leave each question up for about 5 minutes for your table to discuss. First question. Based on the data at your tables, what challenges do you see? What challenges do you see? Based on the data that you have at your table, what challenges do you see? About 5 minutes at your table to digest that, look at some numbers. I'll give you a little bit of a warning. Have fun, university.
Is it my lemonade? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, well, some of our classes, yeah. So dumb. We don't know how many, but they're here. Because I like telling the principal that I don't want to.
All right. That's been about 5 minutes, but I see folks keep conversation, so I'll add one more minute before we move to the next question. Please make sure you capture your thoughts around the challenges you do see, the challenges you are seeing in this data, and jot those down. Thank you.
We couldn't see it.
All right. I know you're deep in conversation, but I'm going to move us to question 2 for the sake of time. I'm going to move us to question 2. So those are the challenges. You identified some challenges. I see a lot of good information and challenges down on paper. Very helpful. Next speaker. If you have to turn your paper over, that's fine as well. Based on the data now, what do you see are possible solutions? What are solutions to the challenges you just came up with? For example, at X school there's low performance, so maybe we should, whatever that might be. What are those solutions? About 5 minutes around this question.
of the
You read your mind.
But before we go to question 3, again, just momentarily. Before we go into question 3, I just want to make sure you know because some folks have questions. And as we go, because of the size of the room, we have actually placed note cards on your tables to jot down your questions so we can collect them and then answer the questions at the end. So if you have questions as you go, like, hey, I want to ask you this or that or the other, I think that might have come from over here at some point, please write them down so that we can go at the end and answer your question. Okay? So make sure you write your questions down. But here is question 3. Based on that data, we came up with challenges, solutions. What other things should be considered? What are those other things that may not fit directly into the data that you saw? What are things we should still consider? If you could jot that down, that'd be great. Great. Yeah, you can turn it over to the other side. That's fine. All right. What else should we consider? 5 minutes. Feel free to have that conversation. What else should we consider? Challenge, solutions, and other considerations.
It's yours, right?
last thought. Jot it down on paper. For the sake of time, the chances of getting to every table in the next 30 minutes might be challenging, so I might just call just a few tables to share out of what they might have come up with. Dr. Brown, let's start with your table, please. Hold on one second. Just give your challenge solutions and potential other options, if you don't mind. Microphone's coming towards you.
Some challenges that we noted at our table was that we doubled the number of scholars who took the ACT in 2018, and we also noticed a drop in the scores that year. We're wondering how that impacted it. And when we look at chronic attendance across all of the schools, that was a consistent error where students were missing more than 10% of school at every single school. And one recommendation that we came up is, could we use flexible schedules and start times for students who are not there? Maybe utilization of virtual classrooms so that we can still continue the learning even though they're not in the building.
Thank you. And that solution is very similar. I can't remember who has been bringing up at past town halls the idea of high school. The start time for high school is way early, so that's something that I think is a viable thought. So I appreciate the flexible schedules comment. Let's go to another table. AJ, do you mind what your table might? You don't have to share. You can pick on your partner or someone else at your table. It's the hat. I was drawn to the hat.
Lorain.
All right, so we said the first one was family engagement. State tests have changed each year for the past 3 years. We keep making curriculum changes, administrative changes, and state tests are culturally biased. Solution is parent involvement. Legislative changes need to happen and create a culturally competent exam. The third thing is they said title services, resources to help the teachers, wraparound services, and more busing.
Oh, there we go. I'll take a third table. Sorry. Or we'll do 3 and 4. They both went up at the same time. You go for it. They kind of put you on the spot. They'll go first. That's fine.
So our table, great table. Appreciate the input of these great folks. We said some of the challenges were there's only pockets of positive places on the report card grades. I think Mark said maybe the work and the teaching isn't necessarily related to the kids' lives, and it might not have been Mark. But the solution is tie the curriculum to the kids' lives, get the kids interested. Sandy brought that one up. He was like, you know what? He's like, I don't believe the kids are dumb, they're disinterested. And so the solution was tapping into the kids' interest and asking the kids how they want to learn. And we had a great example here when my neighbor was in school. The teacher actually talking to the kids and saying, let's go through these various topics and what topics are most interesting to you. Embracing the differences of kids and just the importance of learning languages was brought up, right, at our table. So, thank you guys.
Last but definitely not least, bring us home.
Okay, I mean, a lot of the things that were said were great. I mean, wonderful, and hopefully there will be some solutions in order to get to where the schools need to be. However, we looked at the challenges, and one of the challenges, and I think that a lot of you said the same thing, was that family involvement and the environment from which our students come, that they don't have what they need in their homes in order to be able to perform well in school. I think another challenge is providing updated textbooks, allowing I think also another challenge is the apathy to motivate students to study and to develop an interest in a quality education. They have to feel good about what they're doing. They have to feel that they are good, and that has to be ingrained in them. That, hey, you really need this education in order to be successful in life. Whether you go to college or whether you go somewhere else and get a different kind of training, but you do have to have a quality education. And I think we talked about the fact that that we also have to have some alignment of curriculum and to what is expected on the ACT and the SAT test, and that we should provide training for students in taking the ACT and the SAT, and then also provide them with opportunities to take those tests as a practice test, more than just one time when it is going to count and say, this is what you have, and this is what you got in order to get into college.
Thank you so very much. There's some common threads that started to jump out, one of which is around parent involvement. How do we get more of our families involved? How do we make sure we're reaching out to them and making them part of not only the process, but the ability for our kids to be successful? We need them, right? I heard another theme around the curriculum. Curriculum from the sense of aligning it to the expectations of where kids need to be. I promise to be right there. Where kids need to be, but also making it interesting and engaging and relevant to their needs. And what they see in them. Short story, there was a young lady who actually emailed me earlier this week about the desire to having a course that helps her understand her history. Beautiful outline of wanting to know what it means to be a Hispanic American woman. It's a conversation that I don't think we have enough. And the fact that a young person, realizes that and realizes the need, I think, is powerful. So that alignment to what our kids are asking for, I think, is crucial. The third I hear loud and clear is something around how we build our schedules and days and how we actually configure this learning for kids in a way that kids can perceive it and accept it. So is there something there on how we think about how we actually create the day where a kid can be successful? I think that actually stems a lot from that video where we see a lot of Gen Zers who are on the phone at all hours of the day. So how do we think about those elements as well? Did you have one other thing you wanted to add before I move to
Yes, because I keep hearing a lot about college. We've got to face facts. A lot of our kids do not have the wherewithal and are not going to have the support system to go to college. So what are we doing to make sure that they have the skills when they walk out that door for the very last time, that they can get a job and that they can survive and not become a victim to the system? And we've got to go and recognize those kids too, because they get left behind.
That's right.
Not everybody.
I was sure those kids do not get left behind. Completely agree. Completely agree.
Coming from a younger person, we have so many kids graduating that have no life math skills. We hammer out
Life math skills?
life math skills.
Gotcha.
How credit cards work, how to build your credit, how to buy your credit. Where do these loans take it now? You know what? Real life skills here. I advocated when I ran for Congress last year. We can talk about pre-college or it should be what it is now. But we got to pass a bill to stop these universities from raising tuition. It's over. It's been a monopoly. We told these kids to go to school. There's not enough people to get into those schools, so they raise the tuition. I don't care if you got 30 on your ACT or SAT, whatever score you got. You got these kids, you tell them you got to be a nursing degree, go to Cincinnati, you get $100,000 in debt. And that nurse goes and makes $30. No, she's really, her fees make $15. You want to change things? You got to stop the monopoly of people that created it. We spend so much time on all these other subjects, but the subjects we need to know how to go, how to be involved in school. How many community service projects have we done Those are simple things that we engage kids with, and until we come to reality that college is not affordable. There are 3 girls right now that are working at Boys and Girls Club where I work at, and they're in their early 20s. They can't afford to go to school because their parents are going to pay for their school, so there's no. So you know what? It doesn't matter we're talking here because until we find a way to institute like math goes to the sport work from our education system, where these kids, until we stop the public university and raise tuition, it's scary as a young person to find yourself owing debt. The other generation didn't have to deal with that. But this generation has to. So until state legislators can figure that out, get things done, that's why I'm here today. And it's going to take young people, people like Mary and people on the council, they're going to stick up and stand up and they're talking for us to show the community that we're going to work together and do things. Until that happens, whatever you're saying here.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So I appreciate both of those sentiments because I think they're equally as important in the sense that, one, we have to.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Lorain. I'm a member of the State Board of Education, District 11. And first, I just want to say this is a wonderful turnout, and I really appreciate it. I came in from Cleveland because I care about you. What the gentleman just mentioned in the back is financial literacy. And if you go on the Ohio Department of Education website, there are financial literacy standards that are being developed for Ohio. So also we've put together a strategic plan, and I know everybody's busy, but if you're ever sitting with nothing to do, I would really like you to look at the Ohio Department of Education and look at our strategic plan that the State Board of Education just put together. You will find that a number of the things that have been mentioned in this room are in our strategic plan. So we're on the same page. It's just a matter of being able to implement it to make these schools what your students deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. I think that the importance of that curriculum, the importance of that real life application is equally important, and making sure we're not leaving kids behind. I don't want to lose those 3 thoughts that came up from the 3 individuals that spoke. So with that said, we as a district have also spent some time looking at the same data, mining more information. And there's a few things we also saw very similar to the things that you pointed out, but aligned into our schools as a district. Looking at a district level, here are a few things that we saw. One, we're seeing on the positive side, our elementary schools, attendance and performance is improving through different avenues that are going on during the year. I think that is something that we should be celebrating. There's excellence that are happening in our schools, and it's happening early. Is it happening enough? That's a greater question, but it's starting in our elementary schools. We're improving the accuracy of how we're grading our kids. I mentioned earlier about the story of the young person who got straight A's and then was led to that led ultimately in getting an ACT score that didn't match the grade she was receiving. So we're spending time thinking about how we grade our kids more accurately, aligned to the standards in which they need to master. Elementary schools, we're seeing fewer incidents of suspensions or incidents leading to suspensions. While on the other side, we're seeing in the middle or high schools, as you saw from the data, you probably saw a little bit more red in the big board in our middle and high schools. You saw a little bit more underperformance in our middle and high schools. And you're also just seeing the reality that we have to do more in those grades. It starts early, but realizing it's reflecting itself in our middle and high schools. And last thing's the piece that I think is great to see this level of engagement, because I think the voices that we need will only be in this room will make us better. We need all voices to make this better. So the fact that we engage in a deep conversation at your tables around what is necessary will only get us further faster. We also had very similar conversations at the district level. We spoke to principals, all of the admin building, community business partners meeting. If you've attended, raise your hand if you've been to one of those meetings. At the last meeting, you probably remember this chart, because this was the chart that we shared of some initial ideas around priorities for next year, and you kind of ranked them and gave us some feedback. You'll see a lot of the elements that you were talking about tonight pulled through here, right? So initially we were talking about, what is that curriculum? What are the standards-driven instruction practices? What do they look like? What do they need to sound like? We talked a lot about creating that culture of learning and joy. So the gentleman in the back who was talking about financial literacy, part of that joy is creating a curriculum that attaches our kids to the work so that they will experience later in life and making it real and fun. And this last one is around how we think about our collective schools and how we approach collective development of our schools and expectations for what they look like. And that's where we kind of started, I would say, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It then evolved to something a little bit smaller because there was a loud cry in a sense and a productive piece of feedback, like that's a lot on one slide, to the point that you can't quite see it. I'm almost done, I promise. That you can't quite see it. And so then we said, let's simplify this a bit. Let's pull it together and realize, you know what? Let's identify what it means to have an excellent school. Again, starts to pull some of these ideas that you're getting at, and I think we'll actually tweak a few based on your thoughts. So 1, thinking about how we provide instruction. 2, live up to our expectations. And then 3, just create that joy of learning and reflection. Right? But if nothing else that we need to do, as the biggest priority for next year, at least the proposed priority, is just create a system of excellent schools. Just one school system that works. Now, what is it and what isn't it? What do I mean by that? Since I got here, we started thinking about what it will take for us to move in a new direction. Hence the Lorain Promise team. Lorain Promise has 5 components in it, and we realized the importance of focusing on those 5 pieces. But even when looking at those 5 pieces, there's one that jumps out, and that's commitment 4. When we talk about creating spaces where scholars and teachers and leaders can thrive. In order to do that, we have to create schools that do that across the district. And so those systems, those schools, need to operate as one. Because right now we see excellent in schools, but we don't have an excellent system of schools. And that's where we need to move. Where we're not going to go, which I think is the apprehension and the fear, is that, so does that mean you're going to privatize Lorain? You're going to move to this space where charter schools become Lorain? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That is not the goal for what we need to do to create a system of excellent schools. What we need to do is figure out the challenges our schools have, breathe life into those schools, and give flexibilities to schools to realize the greatness that lives within them. I don't think we need the outside influences of charters to be in our space. We can figure this out. It's a conversation around this community, not the outside. So to clarify, creating a system of excellent schools means we, as a community, need to stand up and define that excellence and carry it through. That's all it is. That's all it is. I see 2 hands. And then I'm going to read these 3 questions, and then we are out of time. Yes? I said those 2 hands right there. Yes. Actually, I think there's more questions in your head about that.
One of the things that you went past on there, but you mentioned in your State of the Schools address the other day in the video, was the low survey responses of the staff not turning those in. And I know you've referenced that several times. But I also, 2 issues with that. One, it was not necessarily anonymous. First whole page of it had 7 questions, I believe, which indicated how long have you worked in the district, what buildings are you at, what grades do you teach, what do you teach? That was very directly through Google accounts that were ours. So it was not, and when we have teachers that are escorted out of buildings and things like that for suspected mishaps to be investigated, people don't feel safe answering those surveys. So if something could be done that was truly anonymous, even if it's paper pen when you hand it in, that'd be great. The question I had for you earlier, and I know I'm absconding with this, Mike, the ACT score is listed on the back of that paper. It looks at the scores from 2014 all the way through last year. My concern with that is, or my question about that is it looks like we've had a consistent decline since the state has taken over, which is questionable to me. I mean, especially in the past 2 years, our scores have gone down almost 2 points consistently across the board. And then lastly, my 3rd question, there's been information going around that you had sought outside of the state employment through Chicago. If that's the case, where does that leave the status of the district. If you were to leave and go get employment somewhere else in the midst of this, does the process start over? What happens to our kids? What happens to our community that's building this trust? So I would like to know kind of where that stands for the kids.
Sure. Thank you. I think the first one is definitely noted. We had an opportunity to speak to a bunch of different individuals about that very concern, from a group of teachers that meet with us. It's also been brought up to us through other avenues, teacher union, things of that nature around those concerns. Like, it wasn't anonymous. It was so to the point where there was a union rep who said, there's only 2 of me in this union, and if I answer all these questions, I'm a guy, she's a lady, you don't know who it is, right? And we apologize profusely for that, because we actually want to make sure we want to make sure that we get the information, and we made the mistake of maybe asking too many questions. The reason why we did ask those questions is because we want to make sure we know who we need to help and support with those individual answers, because otherwise, if we just kind of throw it all into one bucket, we may not be able to decipher who really is asking for what. Now, we don't want individual names, but we would want to know if this school is seeing a need versus this school, right? You might say at Hawthorne Elementary versus Lorain High, you could argue their needs are probably pretty different. And that survey was intended to grab that difference, and without some demographic information, we might have lost some of the information. Is that something we need to fix? Absolutely. And will we fix it? Absolutely. The second question around ACT scores, I couldn't agree with you more, right? Goes back to Jeffrey Canada's point around if it continues to decline, whoever was in leadership at that time, we have to do something different. You're absolutely right. I don't disagree with that. I think one of the big shifts we made last year, if you look at the number of kids that were tested, our focus last year was to get more kids exposure to the ACT. So when you increase the denominator of that problem and the scores remain the same, you're going to see a dip in scores. That doesn't mean that's right or wrong, but that's the reality. What we need to then figure out now that we have our kids tested, how do we improve the instruction to prepare them for such assessments? So I wholeheartedly agree. Countless meetings when we look at numbers like, man, this still is happening. What do we have to do about it? The first step is holding that mirror up and saying, okay, what do we do? Then figuring out the plan and then moving on. So I appreciate you raising that. The third, which I apologize that I have a smirk on my face, it's kind of funny to me. I was a Michael Jordan fan. I love Chicago, but I did not interview anywhere near Chicago. I think another comment I heard was I was in Europe. I wasn't in Europe. And so to answer that question sincerely is, there's no doubt that my heart is here. I want to be part of the solution. You have my word, you have my presence, you have all these other people as witnesses. I want to be a part of that solution. And I think part of that solution means opening up new conversations and communication lines. I'm encouraged by conversations that I've already had through informal chat lines with our Board of Education, because I know that has been a point of community, like, why isn't this getting right? Why aren't you talking to the board? I think now there's momentum to do so, and I'm excited to engage in those conversations. And I'm excited for us to actually think about partnership in a way that makes sense for this community. And so if that's an olive branch to show that that's another level of my commitment, please know that it's coming. Because I think it's important for people to see, I don't want to go anywhere, nor do I desire to educate anywhere else in America. I want to be here.
Just to follow up really quick, and I don't think I clearly understood that. Did you or did you not interview elsewhere?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I did not.
Speaking of the open communication lines, I'm asking for you to give us the time to go over the questions and answers that we've submitted today.
Yes, so I will have a few, because some of them were repeats, so hopefully some of your answers will come through. We have the rest of the cards, and we'll do it online, like we've done with other FAQs, and just answer the questions. Okay? Does that answer your question, Ms. Question?
No.
Okay, sorry.
We're talking about open lines of communication, or, I'm trying to be respectful, but we haven't had a chance to communicate with you. The last town hall was canceled. There's been a couple of people that have waited for emails. Yes, so we have the time. We'd appreciate if you give us yours and answer the question.
Okay, I have no problem.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
How do you expect our students to succeed when you are constantly berating the people who are presented to them in front of them all day, 5 days a week? Can you address the fact that the information that you gave about the attendance rate for the teachers was inaccurate? That was proven, the data says it. Who gave you that data?
So a few things. I want to answer the first question because it does bother me, honestly. That there's a feeling of
how does it bother when you constantly put out the same information over and over, and you just put on there low response to the survey, and it wasn't to say you're sorry, but then when this lady brought it up, oh, I'm so sorry, we apologize profusely. Where? Because all you do is put out publications about how bad our teachers are and how much they're missing school and they're not doing this and they're not doing that. You never apologize publicly. So don't you think that would be important? If you're going to publicly chastise someone, why would you not publicly apologize?
So I appreciate the question. I think what I hear more than anything else in that situation and that comment is that as a leader in this district, I do a better job of celebrating those teachers who are doing well and spend less time narrating what is perceived as negativity. And I think that statements in which I do make when I am attempting to balance two things. I think there's a challenge of not providing transparency around what is happening and what the community may or may not see. I feel as a leader it is my job to share that. Is there a better way to do it? Yes, I agree, and I apologize for not expressing it in a way that allows for people to see the reality so we can fix it, and rather than people have internalized it as a failure. And that's all me. I'm not finished my plan. Okay. I promise I won't move on. So when we think about the challenge in front of us, when I display information that gives indication that we're not moving in the right direction, please know, and I'm saying this to everyone here, my intent is to share information, not to demean. And if it has been demeaning, I do apologize. As far as teacher attendance goes, there was and if you're not familiar with that, and I think you're referring to the FAQ question, the Titan touch points. Is that probably where you're talking about? There was a data point in there about around the teacher incentive and why it kind of came out and all those pieces of information. Neither here nor there. I had made a statement in August about last year's attendance, where I stated a number of 18.2 days are missed by the average teacher. And if you look at our records, and again, I'm sure I'll get a public records request for it, it's not a problem, so that people can see that we have a challenge with two things. Making sure that we have a great educator in front of our kids every single day. We have a challenge in finding teachers to replace them when our teachers are out. So what we have created is this challenge of when teachers are out, we have to find a sub maybe. And this past year, the point I was trying to make was we had to build a budget of about $1 million to pay for substitutes and otherwise to kind of combat that. And my hope was, with that $1 million, is to actually give it back to teachers as an incentive. And that was really the response I was getting out of the question, and I apologize if that is not what came across.
So are you acknowledging that that information was inaccurate, that you were saying that because you stated that you did not include FMLA, paid leave, or unpaid leave, which is untrue. So can you please acknowledge that that information was inaccurate, that you did include paid leave, including the leave that happened because of the teachers that you walk out? Like there was one teacher who did not get a hearing for 4.5 weeks, was put directly back in her classroom after the incident was deemed not
So let me say a few things, which I appreciate that you brought it back to kids. My responsibility, not only as a leader of this district, but as a parent, is to make sure that whoever is in front of our kids is the right person and will keep our kids safe. And the one thing I won't apologize is putting safety first. That is a priority. If the investigation takes an extended amount of time, I understand the challenge that it creates. However, I do not want to make that mistake and put someone in front of someone else's child, because I would not want that to happen to my child. And for something that goes awry. Now, granted, nothing went awry. I'm glad if we had figured it out when we moved on, and I do apologize for the length of the investigation. However, I want to make sure we're on the right side of it, and I'm on the right side of everything in our kids. If I could.
The question is, let's assume that 18 teachers, 18 absences are there all the time. Did you take a look to see why those 18 days are out? Are they out? Are they out because the teachers are sick? Or are they out because they're not supported? Are they out because they're being chastised? It's not always just sickness that they're out.
So I think there's a few things there, Mr. Hayden, that I think you're hitting on. We would love to have more information. I keep stepping in this water, great. We would love to have more information on why our teachers call out. But the system that we do have, the report system, in which I get, for example, every morning, I'm able to see, I get email for every absence. So every morning I see the list of absences, and it tells me what the indicator is, whether it's sick or they take an accrued day, but it doesn't give me much more information than that. The only other report that I'm able to pull is, well, there's a couple of reports, but the only one that kind of gives information are like the days of the week they call out, but doesn't give us information around why. The intent of the engagement survey, but I want to be clear that I think the error we made on our end when we asked so much demographic information, it created fear in our teachers to respond, because in the survey, it was asking for, what are the challenges? So we probably would have gotten more of that information if we did a better job on the front end in creating a way for our teachers to feel that they can give honest and retaliation-free information. So I think right now, to answer your question, we don't have the capability to understand deeply why, other than kind of just superficial indicators.
Hey, Dave, if you have interest in why teachers are absent, via your own public records request I made of your people, I can tell you the answers. And I can tell you, and you know, that you included FMLA and other reasons in the 18.2 that you created, and you told everybody. Stop misrepresenting the attendance of teachers. If you want to see it, I'll have a discussion with you. I got it right here. It came from your office.
Gotcha. Jay, we did speak about it the other day. I look forward to continued conversation about it. But I think Mr. Hayden's question around the why is still the one that I think we should find answers to. I saw a few hands over here as well. Yes.
We're talking about teachers absent and kids absent. And one of the reasons kids are absent, I believe, is because when you have PD days, you bring a child in at 7 o'clock for high school, and they get fed breakfast first, they go to their class for an hour and a half or whatever, and then they have to be given lunch, and they leave this building by 10:30. They don't even want to get up, and parents, I can understand. Why would they get them up for 2 hours in school? Can't you do PD days after school? I mean, this is actually making it worse for us as far as the state goes, because I would bet you, I'm sure you have, the statistics on it. I'm sure that's one of our biggest days absent, and that's once a month.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I was going to keep mine up.
So I'm glad you brought that up. I think there's two things there. One of which, the idea of doing it after school, I think is a fantastic idea. However, I also am very sensitive to folks who have things to do after school. They have other jobs and things of that nature, to be fair, right? I mean, I think that's viable, for a lot of folks around the room. They have children or otherwise to go to. However, we also realize, to your point, the data does indicate those are our lower attended days. The intent was to do two things, right? One was to find a way to provide the professional development necessary for us to continue to grow as individuals, but also just realizing, and this is more of a plea for kids in the sense, when we don't have school, sometimes kids still have food. And it was an attempt to ensure that at least our kids get something that day, while also we can continue to grow as people. Now, granted, we are going to do something different next year. There's a couple of different calendars that are floating around to kind of rectify that piece. But that was the intention. I just want to let you know the thinking behind that intention. But I appreciate the suggestion as well. I think I saw a gentleman's hand there, and then Ms. Mazzardo there in the back. Just 1 second so I can hear you. Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I want to say thank you very much. I'm not a teacher here. I'm not sure if this is the correct forum to ask this question or not. But I am a parent. I've been a long-time resident of Lorain. I grew up here. I went to the original Longfellow here. Grew up and graduated from Lorain High, the original Lorain High. And I know right now I am a parent, but I'm also a business owner of this community. And I know a lot of times it seems like a lot of teachers here kind of do apologize. I'm not sure all the stuff that's going on in the system. But one question I have, one concern I have is that I know the school system right now is pushing more and more of the college for kids to do. Now, Lorain is more of a collar type work system. So a lot of kids do not want to go to college or have that ambition to go to college. I personally did not go to college. I went through a technical school, got an apprenticeship program. I have 3 kids. 2 of my kids have graduated from Lorain High. I have 2 that rank a kid right now in Toledo. I have 1 at LCC. My 3rd kid, though, he's a little bit different. He's not like that. He does not aspire to go to college, but he wants to be in some type of construction aspect or hands-on type of person. Now, when I went to school here, we used to have 3 high schools. And back then we had quite a variety of different vocational classes that kids could take. So my son now, you know, he's not looking for college, he's looking for something more of the hands-on stuff. And looking through the website, there's really nothing that the school system offers. Now, I know a lot of the other schools around here have a partnership with like JBS, where they have that ability to go there to get an education for construction. Lorain does not participate in that. And I understand why they did it years ago when I was in school, because there's so many kids, there's so many high schools, we have that. But now Lorain does not offer any of those types of
We do. We
offer a handful of things. I was looking online last night on the website. For instance, you have a class for heating and air. You have a class for auto body. You have a class for culinary. And I think there's a couple other classes. When I went to school here, there used to be welding. We have electrical. There used to be culinary. There used to be secretary. There used to be a lot of different stuff. Now Lorain does not offer that for the kids today. And I see a lot of the kids, just from me as a business owner and going in my time to the community for certain things I do, and a lot of them don't have that. They want that hands-on stuff. So it's a suggestion to either bring one of those classes back or to allow Lorain City Schools to try to get them into JBS, because right now I'm trying to personally try to get my kids to JBS, but I can't because Lorain does not have that.
That's what we've done.
So that's all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So I want to answer a couple parts to that. And just to be clear, all of the programs you named, we actually do have in the high school. We have, and the reason why we don't participate in JBS is because we have such a robust industry, kind of track or program that allows kids to participate in those things that they want to get their hands on. And I'll allow Ms. Haney to kind of speak to those a little bit, because she leads and is working a little bit closer to that, so you can hear all those pieces. But I also heard something else very, very important from what you're saying. One, kids need things, there are a bunch of kids who want to work with their hands. They may not be on the college, right? They absolutely want to go from high school into a career, right? And there's a bunch of careers that pay pretty darn well once you leave high school.
The construction field is right now, letting this person for a fact. It's that construction doesn't matter, it's carpentry, masonry doesn't matter. It's one of the highest paying jobs right now.
Yep.
And there is low people looking for that kind of work.
Yes.
And a lot of the people, like for instance, I have one guy that works for me now. He's an apprentice. So I'm actually paying him so for his apprenticeship. When he graduates, he's going to be making $35, $40 an hour. He's not going to have any debt for college. So my oldest son right now, who's going to Toledo University, he's going to come out of college with $80,000, $100,000 debt. Unfortunately, he might come out of there and make that mark, but he's going to be in debt so much. Where in construction, there's more of an opportunity for people. My opinion, what I've seen.
I think you're absolutely right. I 110% agree. I do think the piece that we need to do better as a school system, it sounds like one, we probably need to advertise all the different options that we do actually have and are available to kids, for one, and make it very clear their opportunities. I think two, start earlier, right? So not when they just get to high school, introduce them to these opportunities, but start earlier so they know what those opportunities look like in elementary and middle. And three, something that struck me so that you said that I appreciate is the fact that we as adults have a ton of influence that we just don't know we contain and possess. And sometimes we allow and use that influence to maybe push our kids down one track or one program path or whatever it might be, and not allow our kids to realize what they want to do. And so the idea in the Lorain Promise, Commitment 5 outlines the idea that by 2020,